Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Broman Clash, and tonight in the early morning hours, I would like to talk about a topic, that I've always wanted to talk about for quite some time, and that's the topic of religion. I know some of you may say, "Oh, what? You're gonna bash religion now?" I'm like, "No." Are you gonna praise religion now? I'm gonna be like, "No." You know me. And look, I'm gonna keep it right with you. Religion is a double-edged sword because on one hand, it influenced so many people to do right, and it caused so many righteous people to be there. But at the same time, it caused so many people to be self-righteous, self-absorbed, and egotistical. But at the same time, when you look at religion, you gotta think to yourself, how did religion start? Where did it all begin? And why is it here now? Now, to answer your question, you have to think about, the beginning of civilization and how civilization in its in its development stages, it didn't have like it didn't have a government yet, but at the same time, it didn't have a structured way of doing things. It started to learn how to plant, domesticate animals, but at the same time, disease started spreading around. But at the same time, religion started as a way to help the common man or man, woman, child to understand the origin of the people or how the universe began. Some people actually theorized back then that the earth is the center of the universe, which has been proven to be wrong. That the sun is the center of the universe. Well, uni meaning one and verse meaning to come or something like that. You want to come or to go around. That's the universe. You can correct me on that one, but I know uni means one while omni means all. But at the same time, when it comes right down to it, people just want to know where did life begin. Some people, people had like different origin stories. In Japan, it was a central god that threw his spear down into the ocean, and the whole oh yeah, it was Izanami. Izanami threw his spear down into the ocean, and thus Japan came to be. And then there was Ra, the sun god, and Egyptian Kemetic culture. Then you have Zeus, the thunder god of Greek culture. And then you have Odin, the god king, in Norse culture. And then you have all these other cultures that have parallels, but yet they also wanted to answer the central theme of how do we get here and what gives us the power to stay alive. Some say that it's through blessings, and that we stay alive through willpower itself. Or some people say that certain people have a divine right or a divine birthright that God gave at birth, gave them the right to rule. Now, that presented a bit of a problem because, let's talk about the bad half of religion and how the way some people actually believe that it was their divine right, their divine birthright to rule. Now, that's a problem because, even though they outright state it, but it's also wrong because not one person can rule many people, especially when you look at very many revolutions, especially despots who were killed because they tried to take advantage of you know the people's patience, and then the people's patience ran thin, and they you know ex exterminated them, especially in the case of the Bolshevik Revolution and how the way that happened. you know to say that religion wasn't, well, religion was there because they were somewhat Roman Catholic, but at the same, because they believed in a God. But after that, with not Joseph Stalin, but with Vladimir Lenin, after all that, that's what happened. Catch me. You have to understand, when it comes right down to it, religion, it's not all bad, but it's not all good. There are good people who look at religion and they use religion not as a source of control, but as a source of improvement, and how the way they can look at them deep within themselves and say, you know what, I don't want to do this because I want to go to heaven. I don't want to do this because I'm scared to go to hell. The reason why I'm doing this is because, you want to know why? Because there's good inside of me. And if there's a guidance and a moral code that exists somewhere in the high heavens or in the lower grounds, huh? And they tell me this is right and this is wrong, and I decide for myself and see that this person's happy and this person's not, I realize that, wait a minute, maybe what I'm doing is actually pretty cool. But that's the thing. I mentioned that religion is also a double-edged sword, because on one hand, you have so many good people and many great things that came out of religion, but you also have many bad things that came out of religion. And divine birthright or divine right is one of them. That's one of the bad things, because I mentioned before that when it comes right down to divine right, nobody has the right to rule many people, because in the end it's just going to end up bad, and the person who's ruling cannot control the people due to them actually being a person themselves. And then you have people who use religion, and I'm going to give like a notable example, that they say that, oh, I practice this religion, I'm a saint, I'm good, and all that other crap, but then they do evil. They try to mask it as good, but they do evil. Some saints, and I remember I saw this as an excerpt in the Bible, and I was looking at it, and I heard it, looked at it, I was just like, oh crap. And this came, and they said that, slave masters, treat your slaves, and if they run, beat them. And if beating them to death doesn't work and they still run, then beat them. And that's just it, man. And when you look at that and how way religion was used to justify murder, war, and segregation right then and there. And then you look at, how the way Islam had its choice records of, war and segregation as well, and how the way certain people use religion in Islam to justify the enslavement of certain people. And no, I'm not trying to say that, Islam is bad. I'm not trying to say Islam is good. I'm not trying to say that, any type of religion is bad, or, whole bad, whole good. Everything has a dualistic nature. See, look, in Taoism, either it's a philosophy or a religion or a spiritual way of thinking. You have to remember, everything exists in balance. And the reason why evil exists is because good is it's actually at an imbalance. Now connect that philosophy, religion, or or spirituality, or that kind of way of life into nowadays. Such as looking at Buddhism, and how the way certain leaders, even though they were influenced by the religion itself, try to force other people to follow it, because they believe, oh yes, this will bring our people to great wealth, and it will save our people from great despair. But in the end, it causes greater despair and causes greater destruction. And especially when I mention about, and sometimes I would bring this up, and I mentioned about the Crusades, and how in the Crusades there were people, especially bishops and bishops of the Christian belief, they wanted the soldiers to fight and make sure they secured Jerusalem for themselves. But how did they do it? They used religion as a way to do it. And the reason why they used religion as a way to do it was because the soldiers' morale relied in religion. Then, when you look at how they used religion as a way to excuse themselves and to make sure that they are looked at in the right, they say, oh yes, if you go to this war, and if you go to do this for the king, you shall be absolved of all your sins, even though they committed greater sins by killing lives that didn't even want to harm them. In fact, probably even influence them. But they did it because they wanted to obtain the Holy Land, which is Jerusalem. And in that war, many lives were lost because people in higher places wanted, land and resources, which in the end didn't help many at all, because people who practice Islam were killed, died, lives were taken, homes were raided, women were probably raped, men were killed, children were killed, and then same goes for Christianity, except it was a little bit less, if I remember correctly. But this is where, they use religion as a way to make sure that they have the upper hand over the common people, because they know that the common people actually do have the power. But at the same time, what does that exactly mean? So you choose the uneducated masses who will blindly follow things because they are afraid to know, so they could, be themselves. Not be themselves, but be under your thumb, under your rule, under your way of life, so that you don't have to deal with the bloodshed yourselves. So you don't have to fight for yourselves. But to make matters, even crazier in itself, and how the way religion was also used to justify not only murder and pillage, yet it was also used to justify not only that, but also slavery, as I mentioned before, especially when you looked at Christianity and how the way, like I mentioned before, and how the way Islam was also guilty of the same thing too. But at the same time, there were a certain group of us that actually were more inclined to actually believing in Islam. Hey, I'm not saying that's bad, but in the process of forgetting your original way of life and your own culture for a foreign one, you also forget a bit of your own identity. Now, I mentioned about the age of exploration and how the way that also tied in with Christianity in itself, because when you deal with Christianity, you also have to deal with the fact that they used it as a way to hire themselves up while making other people look lower than they actually appear to be, such as what they did on with the Native Americans, and how the way their cultures were extremely different from those of the Christian European. And I know some of you are going to say, oh, now you're going to bring race into this. Well, in some cases in religion, you have to, especially when you deal with it in a context. Because if you don't say who is practicing religion, you have to remember. You also have to remember that if you don't say who is particularly practicing religion, you just assume that it's everybody, when it's in fact not. But what did they say in going to the New World? For God, for glory, for gold. They didn't do it for God. They just did it for glory and for gold. They only used God as an image to make themselves look peaceful, while they just took the glory and the gold. And then what happened to people who look just like me? Brought up in chains, whipped, and then after that put up in cages, in boats, the Middle Passage, ring any bells, and then indoctrinated, beaten, and overall being taught how to not be ourselves, but to be in the oppressor's culture. Thus we became the oppressed. But, the bad side of religion continues. Let's talk about the good side of religion. And I mentioned this before in my topic of revolution. There was also Martin Luther and the 95 Thesis. Remember, if I'm correct, Martin Luther was a Protestant, and he saw how the church was using the power, was actually gaining too much power. So he created the 95 Thesis as a way to, you know, to balance that out. But at first it didn't work, but then gradually he began to deliver it out to the people, showing them this pamphlet talking about what's wrong with the church and how it can be, mended. But at like a positive side effect, it caused the people to think. They began to wake up. And when you look at that side of religion, how the way people did not use religion as a way to oppress other people, but to wake them up. You also see, Dr. King, and you also see a bit of Malcolm X. But at the same time, some of you may say that Malcolm X didn't really use religion in a positive way. But if you deal with it in a more Afrocentric perspective, he did. And also, Marcus Garvey was also a Christian. If I remember correctly, Marcus Garvey was also a Christian too. So he also believed in God, but he also believed in his people as well. Hence why he said he did the right thing by helping his people. He did not do the wrong thing. He didn't go out and, harm, rape, and try to justify murder. Malcolm X didn't try to go out there. Well, maybe back then he did, but he didn't have much of a spiritual belief or much of a religious belief because of the fact that, he grew up in a desolate, time, especially during war, segregation, and, all of that. But then he changed his life around, not only due to the help of a leader, but also the help of a religion, even though it was not exactly in its purest form, but it did help him out, even during his last days, right up to the time he was, assassinated. Religion did play a beautiful part in molding him into the great man that we know today. And then if you look at Dr. King and how the way he preached, now he preached and teach brotherhood and how to be, kind and compassionate, but also be smart. Religion also played a part in that as well. And fun fact, Dr. King's original name was actually Malcolm King. He got Martin Luther from Martin Luther of the 95 Thesis. Who'd have thought? Now, religion does go hand in hand, and then some of you may look at Mahatma Gandhi, and I can see that. He taught peace, he made sure his people were there. But at the same time, people, if you know a little bit about his history and how the way he looked, he actually in his younger years did not think highly of black people. He did not look at black people at the highest degree, but at the same time, it didn't stop him from doing right by his people. Now, I look at the fact that he did good, not the fact that he did bad. But, at the same time, just like religion, just like people, everything has a dualistic side. It's a double-edged sword. One side looks good, the other side looks evil. Religion is the same way. One side is good, the other side is evil. But, when you look at, especially when you look at, religion through like a noble standpoint, some people actually use religion to justify their actions. And, sometimes, I will watch, Amy Chan's and Sonic 93's videos. I will watch, some ranters videos and how the way they mention about, oh yeah, I believe in God. Homosexuality, is wrong and all that crap. Hey, look, I'll admit it, to you outright. I used to think the same way too. But at the same time, it was only directed towards those that insulted me, not those that were actually, gay in general. I didn't have no problem with that. But, I admit it. But at the same time, I let it go because I was just like, man, what the hell is the point? I'd rather worry about my people than worry about their sexual preference. Yeah, so what's the point of, bothering about the past? I didn't say like, all that other crap though, man. Try to say it towards gay people in general. It's only towards certain people, but not everybody. But when it comes right down to that, I look at everybody equally now. But just don't try any funny crap. And then if you try to pull like that religious crap on me, and you try to say, hey, look, if you practice this certain type of religion, you know, maybe you might be admitted to a better afterlife or something. Like, you know what? I'm gonna give my take on religion. I'm gonna keep it real. I'm gonna keep it right. Honestly, man, religion is it's just bleak. It's not exactly the most wholesome thing because I look at the history. I look at my people's history and how the way religion was used to justify the raping of women, to justify the rape, you know, the murder of men, to justify the experimentation on babies, the justification of slavery on our people, the justification that our people were savages. That's the reason why I have like a bit of a negative outlook on religion. That's just me, but in general, like I said before, if if I have like an overly negative outlook on religion, that means in some way, shape, or form, I have an overly positive outlook on religion because, I mentioned before, look at some of my leaders. Look at some of the people that had religion on their side. Look at, look at Harriet Tubman, look at Nat Turner, and no, not the porn star, Nat Turner, the rebellious slave, the man. Hey, I love Nat Turner, don't get me wrong. But, and then there's also Malcolm X, Dr. King, and then there's Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, W.B. Du Bois, or Du Bois, all my other leaders, and then you got, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That's what they did. They did not use religion as a way to justify, murder. They did not use religion as an escape mechanism. You want to know what they did? They used religion as a way to educate the people and bring them back to their moral selves. Sure, some people took it the wrong way and, said, oh yeah, this is why we're superior than you. And then, America has the nerve to say, oh yeah, look at these, these black Muslims. Look at these radicals right here. They're using religion as a way to justify, all the other crap that's been going on. Even though, America has been doing the same thing for how many years now? Not even years, not even decades, centuries. And it's still doing it to this very day. And, with the recent, back in 9/11, 2001, I was young. I didn't know what the hell was really going on. And personally, it didn't really, hit me as hard as other people because honestly, my mind was in video games. I didn't know what the hell happened, with the Twin Towers and all that crap until like years after. But why am I mentioning, 9/11? When it comes right down to it, that was when, the stereotype of Muslims were, much more prevalent and how the way they present Muslims as to be like these extremists, terrorists, people who wear, nothing but, turbans. They look dusty. They have sandals on. They speak, of course they're going to speak Arabic, that's the core language in Islam. But, they have explosives on them and all that other crap. And so religion promoted like a bit of a stereotype as well, which that's also a negative. But yeah, America did all this crap, towards the man who practiced Islam and people who look like they came from the Middle East or have like Middle Eastern religion, origin and all that crap. But then America needs to look in the mirror in itself. So there's that, especially with 500 plus years of enslaving people and using religion as a reason to do it. So now you got to present yourself. If you're going to look at certain people due to their religion, well, let me put it like this. I remember I saw a picture of people who look like who are supposedly a part of ISIS, and they say, oh, look at them, those are the Muslims right there. I'm like, okay, cool, but what about the KKK? They're also Christians too, so that means they represent you as well. But they say, oh no, they are not, Christians like that. Like I said, that's also a negative form of religion right there, then and there too. Extremists. People who actually think their way is by law. And if you don't follow that law, you're gonna die. Now, the KKK, they are an extreme form of negative religion because it borderline it's not even like borderline, it's actually right there towards ethnocentrism, which believes that one culture or race, it ties in with racism and ethnocentrism, where the belief that one race is superior or one culture is superior, respectively. And the KKK is like that right there, and religion and religious, which is a bad combination. But yet America doesn't look at KKK members like that, even though some of them are judges and cops at the same time. But they look at ISIS, they look at terrorist groups, they look at Al Qaeda, and they say, oh look, it's the radical Muslims. Look, and there are Muslims right there too. That must be their brothers. You can't do that, man. And it's funny because just because somebody looks different from you, or they practice a different religion from you, you're gonna look at them and say, oh yeah, they are heathens, they are savages, we shouldn't look at them the same way. Well, let me tell you something, man. If you follow that American type of notion, a Eurocentric notion, or an ethnocentric notion, or not even nationalistic, but ethnocentristic notion inside your brain, look at Princess Elizabeth 013, and how the way and she and a few others such as Yoshi Wee One use religion as a way to justify them acting out, or them acting like total brats. But at the same time, it you gotta look at them and say, how did you grow up? But Princess Elizabeth, ooh, she's ooh, man, she's way gone. Hope she did change. Slimly, I guess it might be a slim possibility that she did. Who knows? But at the same time, I don't give a shit. But you catch my drift. You can't use religion as a way to justify murder, justify irresponsibility, and to justify escapism. That's one thing about religion I do not like. I absolutely hate the fact that people use religion as a way to escape instead of to promote growth. Now, they use religion as a way to promote escapism. To say, oh yeah, you know what we need to do? We need to go, maybe we need to go to church so we don't handle the problem. Maybe we need to go to the mosque so we don't handle the problem. Maybe we just need to give our money away so we don't handle the problem, instead of handling the problem right then and there. Escapism is the same as cowardice. It doesn't help. And I used to be the same way too. Not in a religious sense, but more of in a gaming sense. But at the same time, escapism sucks because nothing gets done, and you're just gonna be stuck at the same place at the same time. And how does that promote growth? It doesn't. You're just gonna be in the same mind frame. And I remember I think this was a quote by Muhammad Ali or somebody else, but they said, if you are 30 but yet you view the world at 15, you lost 15 years of your life. And then tie that in with religion. But that's also centuries worth of knowledge right then and there in your present day body. But when it comes right down to it, religion, like I said before, is not bad, but it's also not good depending on how it's used. As a matter of fact, it should be more understood than it should be used. But when it comes right down to it, people look at religion and say religion is bad. We should just ignore it. No, try to understand it. Like people look at Satanism and say like, oh man, it's bad. But then they try to say like, yo, they worship the devil and all that crap. And I'm just like, wait a minute, man. If you look at America's history and you look at the history of Christianity, they use the name of God and yet they justify the murder of millions. So let's not get that twisted right then and there. You should just, what did Michael Jackson say? If you want to make the world a better place, you better take a look at yourself and make that change. And some people are afraid to do that because, I know why? Because change takes effort. It's not happen like that. It's not microwavable. It's just like making a meatloaf. You gotta get the ingredients. You gotta take time. You gotta do the time. You gotta do the grind. You can't just do it that quickly and expect it to be done in that instant. It's not going to be possible, and it's not going to be pretty. In fact, nothing in life is pretty. Everything starts out, as a bud. And a bud, it doesn't look that good, but once it blossoms and blooms, you realize it's beautiful. But at the same time, religion is the same way. People want to use it for different ways instead of trying to understand it and trying to say, look, nature is also a part of it as well. Some people say that religion, see, when it comes right down to spirituality and, awareness, you understand that nature and religion go hand in hand. Some people think that religion and nature don't go hand in hand. Religion and nature do go hand in hand. Everything has a purpose. But at the same time, people choose not to look at that, like I mentioned before, because it mentioned it's too much effort, it's too much time, and it wastes too much time. But let me stress this, and I'm going to stress it right now. Not everybody follows this motif. Not everybody is this way. Not everybody, follows the mistake of their ancestors. But if you try to escape from the mistakes of your ancestors, you're going to end up repeating them. You have to understand them and not do them. That's the thing. Learn from the greats so you can become greater. And if you learn from evil, then just say, you know what, man? I know what you did, but I won't do it. Some people, like I mentioned before, use religion for negative means. And if you look at them and you say, you know what, man? I'm not going to do you. Because you know why? You got many people hurt. I'm going to look at this man who used religion as a way to unify people and not to exploit them. That's the man I'm going to look at because he deals with things on a greater scale, or she deals with things on a greater scale, or little ones, they deal with things on a greater scale. But at the same time, when you look at, religion, people think that religion is, entirely evil or entirely good, and I'm going to stress it throughout every single time. It's neither good nor evil. It's in the middle. Everything has a balance to it. And what I mentioned about Taoism, the reason why evil exists is not because evil is the counterpart of good. It's because it's an imbalance of good. And let me put it into this context. Some religious leaders use the name of of a certain deity to invoke good, but they do evil. Just like I mentioned about the Crusades. Some bishops use the name of the goodwill to do evil when they try to mask it as good. Some of you may not agree and some of you do, but all in all, that's my take on religion. Religion is not bad nor is good. It's in the middle. I'm going to stress it right now. Religion, is good, but I'm more of a spiritualist. And what's a spiritualist? It doesn't deal with religion, but people who practice spirituality know that there is a higher force or a higher consciousness, but they look at it through nature. And some people in religion do the same thing as well. But at the same time, the reason why I look at things through a spiritualist lens is because, not because I don't want to be labeled, but because I found out who I truly am. And through finding out a purpose, you finally bloom, just like the lotus in a dirty pond. And with that, YouTube, that's Broman Clash giving you my take on religion. If you agree, respectfully say why you agree and like. If you disagree, respectfully say why you disagree and dislike. You help. Alright? Love y'all. Later.